today we have great weather. And it's wonderful to look out and see both blue uniforms, but some gray uniforms in the congregation. And to see women and children in period costumes as well as other men in period costumes. It gives us a wonderful joy, I think, to be dressed like this, worshiping like this, in a place that was here during the time we're commemorating. An enormous privilege we have to be in this building. As I said to the soldiers out in the field, and as many of the congregation know, I grew up in Mississippi. I'm from the South. My great-great-grandfather wore the gray. My great-great-grandfather was a member of the Confederate Army. And if I were doing this service in Mississippi, I can assure you there would only be gray uniforms in the congregation. So I'd be a little bit nervous since I've become a Yankee. My brother said I've gone Yankee, and I have gone Yankee. But we would be at that service talking about the War of Northern Aggression. We would be talking about the War of Southern Independence. We would talk about it as though it were the recent unpleasantness. You know what I'm talking about. But here we are today. And I am today, I have to tell you, I am here in the role of the bishop of our diocese, but I'm playing the role of our first bishop, whose name was William Delancey. This is exactly what Delancey would have been wearing. He would not have been wearing the kind of hat. He wouldn't have the kind of stick that I usually have when I come work. There you see exactly what he looks like. So he's dressed like me, except I don't have his little beard. But there are many things that make us similar. He was our first bishop. He was elected in 1838. Like me, he had been a professor before he became a bishop. Like me, he was elected for Western New York when he was living in Philadelphia. Unlike me, he was a very, very rich man. So I wouldn't mind just throwing that back. And in fact, I was elected. When I was elected, I was in Philadelphia. I was sitting just a block away from a street called Delancey Street. So I didn't realize it then, but if I was looking for a sign, that was the right place to be. He came here into this building. He would have been here in this building. He would have been preaching here in 1864. He would have been using this worship that we're using today. So we're trying, as I said, to go back as the way people did it in his time. But again, the invitation is come and see what we do today. One of the great things that we're seeing by worshiping like this today is that the church changes. We think it's always been the same way. Well, it hasn't. We don't quite worship like this. Everything that you see back there came after. The kind of worship we do today came after. It's wonderful to commemorate the Civil War in this wonderful town of Westfield. Remember that the Civil War was the first photographed war, so you could see the images of the proud soldiers the way you look today in pictures as they were marching off to war, flying flags, drums beating, bagpipes as we've had today, eager for battle. And then you see the images of what actually happened, what will be reenacted at 1:30 today. People dead and dying. The terrible suffering that came out of the Civil War. Never as a nation, never in all the wars, everything that has happened, have we suffered as a people as we did through that time of the Civil War. 600 to 800,000 people dead. Think of what that figure would mean in terms of our population today. We are close to that event today. That's why I thank God we're in this place. In this room, at that font by there where William Stewart was baptized and confirmed in the Episcopal Church. And then he went on to be the governor of New York, a United States senator, and then the Secretary of State under A. He himself was the son of a slave owner. I am a great-great-grandson of a slave owner. But I, of course, changed my views about this. He changed his views about this. He gave his life, really, for the cause. As you know, the very night that Abraham Lincoln was assassinated by the traitor John Wilkes Booth, so also was our dear Secretary of State, Seward, terribly shot up that night by the traitors. survived, and he went on to distinguish himself. And remember, he is the person who negotiated the purchase of Alaska. They called it Seward's Icebox. So from Westfield to Alaska, we want to give thanks for Stewart. And we give thanks for Honest Abe, our great, great president, who stopped here on his way to Washington in 1861. And you know the great story of the little girl who walked up and said, Abe, you'd look a little bit better if you had a beard. And he does look better. You know, the Abe that we know is the Abe with a beard. That beard was born here in Westfield. Home of the beard, okay? That's how we know Westfield. And I'm so glad we have at worship with us members who are playing the role of the 9th New York Cavalry, Company B. The original 9th New York Company was instrumental in some of the greatest battles of the war. Second Bull Run, Fredericksburg, Chancellorsville. Above all, the role they played at Gettysburg, that great battle that turned the tide of the war. And the 9th New York was officially commended by Abraham Lincoln for its services during the Appomattox campaign that led to the surrender of Robert E. Lee. This is a great prize. Out of this company, 560 people gave their life. And they came from the small towns of western New York, and they came from Warren County, Pennsylvania. Men and boys who probably had never been far from home, and yet joined up to be part of a cause they believe in. And the notion that the unity of our country was something worth dying for, and that freedom was something worth dying for. Ken Burns, the great filmmaker who made the film about the Civil War, I think you've probably all seen, will be at Chautauqua this summer. He said at one point, the Civil War was fought in 10,000 places. From New Mexico to Tennessee, from Vermont. Did you know there was a little battle in Vermont? To the Florida coast. And those numbers of dead, of died. Mother Virginia is dressed as someone who would have been mourning. Our whole American way of mourning and thinking about death was changed by the Civil War. Our nation was changed forever. You see it in the contrast between this building and the Presbyterians. It would be nice if there were Presbyterians here today. But Virginia and I were looking at this church, and this is a pre-Civil War church, small, humble. That church was built after the North was transformed by the war. It was enriched by the war. It was moving forward by the war. Look at these two buildings, and it gives you slightly a sense of what the war did. But above all, it gave us a moment for the battle cry of freedom. And it taught us that freedom, the dear freedom of our country that we love so much, is always achieved at a cost of courage and sacrifice and willingness for every generation, including our own. Those of you who watched the Roots rebroadcast this past week are reminded again of the terrible cost of slavery. When I was growing up in the South, we never talked about slavery. People acted, it was sort of like the Gone with the Wind version of slavery. Nobody ever talked about that. It was impolite. I think that's all changed now. We know what slavery did, not only to a people, but really to our whole country. Solomon said slavery is the original sin of the United States. And that issue, that division, that separation has never gone away. I mentioned earlier that we in the South used to call this the War of Northern Aggression. But in the North, at the time that people would have been in here during the war, they called it the necessary war. The feeling that this war was necessary to cure something that was wrong in the United States. Slavery and the idea that states could pull out of our union. I want to close by saying three things about freedom today, this precious gift. This precious gift that those who died in the war have given to us. First of all, Western New York has always been about freedom. Take pride in our region and in its small towns. The Underground Railroad threaded its way through western New York and helped slaves get across the Niagara River to freedom in the British Empire in Canada. We were the most important conduit of people making that fast, final part of their journey north. And we should be proud that the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, which outlawed slavery, was passed through the untiring efforts of Augustus Frank, who represented us in Congress and was from the town of Warsaw. And after this service today, after the war has fought the battle, go home once again and watch Steven Spielberg's movie, Lincoln, and see that heroic struggle that our people played such a part in. Your people, not mine, I'm sorry to say, but I'm adopted, I hope, by you. The people of our region. Second, our gospel reading today is about freedom. The woman who bathed Jesus' feet with her tears, isn't that a wonderful story? I want to read it again before I go to bed tonight. Isn't that a fantastic story about this woman doing this and what Jesus does to her? She cries, her tears are the water that she uses to bathe Jesus' feet, and she dries them. And then she is freed from society's ideas about how women ought to behave. That's a wonderful story of freedom. And about how we should live our lives. A wonderful model for us. She is freed from a rule-bound culture to see who Jesus is. And Jesus is the great model of a life based on faith, which gives us the courage to stand up for freedom. Finally, we did not ultimately prevail in that ruinous Civil War. Whatever you call it, it's not over. Yesterday's New York Times, I had a front page story about the town I grew up in the Mississippi Delta, that's still not desegregated. When I grew up in the Delta, I went to Cleveland High School, which was all white, and across the railroad tracks there was an all-black school. 1960s. And it's still not desegregated. It's been a long time since the 1960s. It's moving in that direction. It's not there yet. We think of Michael Brown and Ferguson. We think of Freddie Gray in Baltimore. We think about what happened a year ago in Charleston, South Carolina. We don't have to think about that. And what I want to say to you, where there is no freedom for some people, the struggle of the Civil War is not over yet. The nightmares are something that happened in that church in South Carolina. Those nightmares must be replaced by the dream of God. And God turns to people to have that dream come true. And the people, you soldiers, are reenacting today. I believe we're God's instruments to bring what God wanted for our nation and our people. Because of their sacrifice and their death and what they went through, we know what freedom is. Let us today give thanks to God for the sacrifices of those people. Then we will be able to join in this famous Civil War hymn and know that we speak the truth when we say, "Glory, glory, hallelujah. God's truth is marching on." In the name of our loving God of freedom, amen.
Amen.